Our first story is from user I am Zberg and is titled, I had to kick a loyal regular because he turned out to be a pathological lying cheater. I'm a DM of a D&D 5e campaign for now about 6.5 years, which we played offline at my table. My loyal regular was present from the very beginning of the campaign, barely missing a singular session. He was also very invested in the game, and as a person, he was an absolutely likable, caring guy. He had the tendency of being a bit of a know-it-all and liked challenging me as a DM, but the positives far outweigh the negatives. Now, he always had the reputation of being lucky with his rolls to a point where it visibly frustrated some players, and also me as the DM, because he seemingly managed to succeed every saving throw. But I figured, bollocks, this is just the halo effect at work, and in the end, we all roll about the same average of 10.5. Is 10.5 the average? I guess that makes sense. I don't know. I'm not a statistics person. So I suggested to the group that we track our rolls. So note down the result of every single D20 roll, no matter if it was the disadvantage, advantage, or normal, which everyone had a lot of fun doing. So after around 300 rolls, we calculated our averages. We had our quote unluckiest around 9.7, our second luckiest around 11, and then there was the loyal regular with an average of 13.9, which if we're taking 10.9 as being the statistical average, that's quite a bit above a couple points. Hot damn, that's pretty bonkers. So to see how bonkers that was, I calculated the probability and calculated it again, and then used various AI models to double check. But nope. Every single one gave me the same result. His, quote, luck has a probability of 0.0000. God, how many zeros is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Like fucking 20 zeros or some shit. 0.2062%, or in words, 1 in 169 quintillion, which is a really big number. If you roll 15 times in a row in natural 20, that's 100,000 times more likely than having an average of 13.9 after 300 rolls. I'm gonna just step in here. I don't do statistics. I don't know the math, so I'm gonna trust that OP knows their statistic. I'm not gonna do the fucking math on this one. This is too much for me. Then I started reflecting a bit more on this. When was the last time he failed a major saving throw? When was the last time he rolled an initiative below 20 with his +5 modifier without advantage? I can maybe remember one instance he had a lower initiative, and the last major saving throw he failed was more than 2 years ago. That's a really fucking long time to go without a missed saving throw if you play like a weekly. On his tracking sheet, I can also see that every 5th roll is a 19. That is suspicious. I also started to realize why he always kept all his dice sets in his dice tray. He rolls his dice, and if he need be, he swaps, quote unquote, his roll with one of the other D20s he's already prepared. Probably a 19. And his reason to not sit next to the DM was most likely not, quote, because I always accidentally peek at your dice rolls, and more that I can't peek at his instead. Okay, again, I'm not one to calculate these kind of averages. I am not big on math. The closest I've ever done to anything uber mathy outside of like work or like a math class is like trying to count cards when I'm playing like blackjack or something. I'll be like in my head statistically, I'm like, okay, if I've seen these cards, the percentages are maybe this, but that's pushing it for me mentally. Like I got major fucking dog brain sometimes. So I'm going to assume that all the math here is correct because I'm not going to do the math. And if you'd like to, I recommend, I guess you do then, but I'm not going to. I'm going to trust that they're correct here. I would hope though, all players are being true with their rolls. The fun of D&D comes from the story the dice end up telling. Some days your PC is making all of the necessary rolls to stay alive, things are going great, you're kicking ass and you're taking names. Others, life is throwing you a curveball and you're failing things you really shouldn't be. These ups and downs are what make stories memorable. Personally, I can recall the very first session of Star Wars 5e I ever ran as a campaign, where I ended up rolling really, really well. And one of my players, a Mandalorian fighter, he was like themed to be a bounty hunter basically, that was rolling absolutely fucking terribly that session. Actually a number of times during the campaign, unfortunately. But it was so memorable to me. One, it was slightly horrifying. We're in session 1 and they're like level... Oh God, were they 1? They were 1 or level 3. I don't remember. I think they were level 3. Super low level. It's very dangerous time sub level 5. You know, if anybody's played 5e before. And this badass Mandalorian almost dies to a Thunian wart hornet. Just basically think like a giant bug, you know? So it was wild to me. And it's memorable to me, one, because I almost fucking killed him. and 2 that they were just rolling bad. Like, that's just, the story goes that way sometimes. And to me, that's interesting. That's cool. But I will say, if a player somehow went 2 entire years of regular playing without failing a major save, I might want to start questioning some things, especially if you're playing in person. But again, I would also hope in those that instance that player is just insanely lucky or built a really fucking good character. Because cheating's kind of shitty, especially in something that's not competitive. Like, God, you better not see D&D as competitive. All right, something is completely off. The heck? So I'm organizing to sit down with that player right before our next session. It's going to be simple. I confront him with the numbers. He owns up that he's been cheating. He'll apologize to the group. We'll talk it out together because, hey, there might be some sort of underlying issue for his cheating we might support him with. And for the next few sessions, he's going to be under special supervision from me until he rebuilds my trust. DM's really planning that one out. So I'm confronting him with these probabilities and rolls and ask him how he can explain these wildly unlucky numbers. His answer, not even an excuse like, oh, maybe one of my dice is weighted. I got them as a gift from a friend. Nope, just straight up, I'm just that lucky. You're kidding me, right? There's a clear line between being lucky and being a cosmic biased anomaly of luck. Well, all right, we got a boss fight coming up. Mini rolls to be had. He gets a dice set from me, rolls using a dice tower, and one of the other players tracks his rolls. The result after the session with 53 rolls, an average of 11.2, 2.7 below his average of 13.9. Do note, it is above the average that OP listed previously of 10.5. His response, to get scientifically significant results, you need at least a sample size of at least 10,000, if not millions. What a load of horse shit. This isn't a scientific experiment. Dice are used to learn about probability because they're one of the most reliable ways to calculate probability. You don't need a sample size of 10,000 or more to determine the first clear tendencies. Okay, not a scientist, but I don't think you need a sample size of 10,000 plus to get a good data spread. I did take statistics when I was in college, and I did major in economics when I was in college, which is funny considering I fucking hate math. But for your data, you don't need 10,000 for those and a lot of scientific stuff. You don't necessarily. You do want a good chunky number, you know, like 1,000's a really good data spread. It also depends on what you're checking out here. If we're talking rolls, no, you don't need 10,000. If we're talking, you know, maybe scientific data for the effects of a medicine on people, yeah, maybe you do want something like 10,000 so you can really get everything in order here. I think personally the problem player here is just annoyed that they're being called out with an answer like that. I'm also at this point, I'm still trying to wrap my head around why somebody would cheat at D&D, but I also understand that some people really need to win and they see D&D as being competitive, which is not the fucking mindset to have, but I digress. Okay, what now? Organize another sit down with that player because I feel there's some sort of underlying issue at work with him. He's always made some rather strange claims about himself, amongst other things that he doesn't feel pain, a genetic defect only 1 in a million people have. Why does OP know this? Did problem player tell them that? I don't even fucking know that. So I'm trying to probe him about what makes him cheat and make these outrageous claims. Whether there is some sort of fear of failing, he claims that he has rather strong exam anxiety, or maybe that he sees me as some sort of enemy he has to defeat because he feels that I'm unfairly singling him out a lot of time. He does usually suffer the most severe consequences during the game, but that's because he's always the cockiest in what his character does. But his response, no, nah, not really. I gotta ask, so when we say cockiest, is it like the actions he does are super cocky and like very dangerous? Or does he talk to OP here in a very cocky and kind of like potentially maybe demeaning seeming manner, you know? Because some people who are cocky come off as kind of aggressive, and that could put somebody in the mindset that need to match that level of aggressiveness with their own, you know? So they don't feel like they're on the defensive necessarily. I'm not saying that's what's happening here. I'm going to make the grandiose assumption that when he says that's always the cockiest in what his character does, is I'm going to assume that this character does very dangerous and elaborate things, and not that the person interacting with the DM is being cocky and maybe eliciting a more aggressive response from the DM. Other thing I'd like to bring up, has OP/the DM here asked other players to watch him in particular? I'm not talking like the one time you had him roll with a dice tower on your own set of dice and had another player like check his stuff. But have you like touched base with the other players? Have you said like, hey, I've been noticing that Frank here has a lot of very strange rolls. Have you noticed anything off about like Frank's rolling? Does he seem to be hiding something? Like, is Frank acting strange? If OP hasn't like seen them cheating because he's like busy DMing and stuff like that, there's like no way the other players haven't seen that, right? Especially if they're like surrounding each other and stuff at an in-game, like in-person event, like the other players have to at least have some suspicion, right? Also, if this is such a big concern, what you could also do is you go, hey, I want to make things more interesting, guys. Here is a dice tray. We're all going to roll in this dice tray. And everybody, including the DM for shits and giggles, can just roll openly in the dice tray. You can make it much more dramatic. You know, you're building up to a saving throw. You go, Frank, your night elf twink, Bob, needs to make this deck save or he'll be wiped out by the fireball. I need you to roll me a DC 15. You're going to have to roll a 10 or higher, Bob, to make that roll. And you do it. Or not Bob. Well, I guess Bob the twink, Frank the player. But then like everybody can gather around that dice tray and watch while Frank sits there and handles the shit out of those dice, you know, just sitting there, just shaking it up. Fist around those dice, you know, like he's cradling a set of and he'll toss it and you can all just watch as it's rolled live. Why not do something like that instead of maybe just confronting the player immediately? Unless, of course, you're absolutely sick and tired of it and over it and just want to be done with this person, then I could guess maybe being aggressive like that. In the end, I'm forced to make an incredibly strange choice, except that I'll have a perpetually lying and cheating player on my table where I will always have to supervise and second guess anything he ever does, or kick out a loyal and active regular. And I chose the latter. I didn't consult the rest of the group for that simple reason that first and foremost, I as the DM have to enjoy the game. And I couldn't possibly enjoy a game with a player like this on the table. And this isn't just, quote, someone who occasionally cheats. This is someone who lives in a perpetual lie. The I'm just lucky wasn't the excuse of a liar. That was from someone who is completely convinced by his own bullshit. No averting of eyes, no nervousness in his voice of what a typical liar displays. When he already lies this badly about something as banal as D&D, I tried to think what other things he lies about. And if I can't help such a person, then the worst I can do is to give this person a stage to live out his toxic delusions. So yes, I had to kick out a loyal regular because he can't own up to cheating. But wait, it gets worse. Before we see what happens next, again, I do wonder, why not just force everyone to roll publicly? You know? Then you can call it out and fix it. I'm not in the driver's seat DMing here, so I have not had to deal with this session after session, so maybe that might be muddying my viewpoint here. Also, I mean, yes, first and foremost, you should be enjoying D&D. That being said, you as the DM may not enjoy every single solitary moment that happens in a D&D session. Your players may do things that throw you for a loop, make you nervous, piss you off. Any gambit of emotions could run through you, and it's okay to every once in a while not be like having the time of your life DMing. Perfectly okay. If it's a consistent thing where you are not enjoying DMing, then yes, obviously you need to take that into account on your decisions to keep players, keep playing the game, whatever. But also first and foremost is I feel like the enjoyment of the group as a whole. And I think it's very important, obviously, that you're getting that enjoyment from this, but just keep in mind that not every minute has to be a high. In this group also plays his best friend. This best friend is a very emotional person and suffers from heavy social anxiety. So when this whole hullabaloo started, his stance was clear very quickly. I'm picking on the loyal player. When loyal player claims his roles are completely legit, then he believes him 100%. He also continued emotionally berating me in various ways, that I'm putting a loyal player on a pillory, that I'm destroying the group, that I don't have any proof of his cheating, etc. When I told the group that I'm forced to kick out the loyal player, he called me 5 minutes afterward and berated me for 30 minutes straight with pure emotional blackmail, oftentimes not even making sense in what he was saying in his emotional fervor. He then left the group in protest as well. So what about the other 3 players of the group? I met with them after the 2 left, and I was relieved to hear from them. They were simply overwhelmed by the situation. They didn't want to say anything, fearing they could make it even worse. They accept the decisions I had to make and want to continue our campaign that is about 10 to 20 sessions before completion, though all of them stay non-committed on the question whether a loyal player cheated or not. But that's not really of my concern. I cut all contact with the cheating player and his emotional best friend. The 3 other players are still in contact with them. Oddly enough, loyal player is also incredibly lucky during Magic the Gathering and other games they play together. Funny that. The campaign is currently on hiatus to let this train wreck settle a bit, but yes, having the outrageous requirement to not be a perpetual cheater has cost me 2 active players and a truckload of emotional labor. Okay, I can understand kicking that player, and it is up to DM ultimately who they let play in their games. Hopefully this does not wreck their table. The other player's hesitancy to respond seems to note that they either seem to not care about the cheating or don't put as much weight in it as OP, or they also might not agree with OP here on this one. But what's done is done, and hopefully they can fill the voids and get back to playing games and having fun. If you have not already, I would love to hear your thoughts on this one. This has been one of the more interesting stories I think we've read. I'm usually backing the OP 100%, and I don't know if I am on this story. I think there's some missteps here, and I'm not knocking them for this. Everybody's going to run their table their own way. Everybody's going to react their own way. Also, I am not in OP's shoes here. I am viewing this as a third party from a post on the internet. Obviously, I'm not sitting in their shoes having to deal with this week to week to week, and, you know, maybe there's facts that just have been left out or not fully explained due to, the fact that we're posting this online. That being said, before we get on to our next story, I stream on Twitch. Links are in the description. I would love it if you were come hang out with me. I stream during the week. Would love to see you there. Our next story is from user Ravenwood83 and is titled Player Believes All Games Are DM versus Player. Okay, forgive me, this is my first post. I was recently in a game with a player I had been the DM for before. He was always a little off and had apparently left multiple Discord servers because of problem DMs. I'm now starting to think he might have been the problem. So for context, we were in a battle and I had cast a spell that had a lingering damage effect, and the DM had a magic book that had fallen open that had a wild magic effect that would go off every round. Well, I forgot once about my lingering damage and brought it up, probably a bit later than I should have, I admit. And the damage caused an enemy that had been put to sleep to wake up, which upset said problem player. Then without thinking, I also reminded the DM about his wild magic effect when he forgot. My mind was, ooh, maybe we'll get one of those fun effects. Problem player proceeded to then whisper under his breath, I hate you. We ended up winning the battle. That's a bit harsh. I don't think it's a bad thing to correct yourself and to remind your DM if they miss things. We're all only human. I would hope someone would remind me if something was incorrect or I forgot something. And to be honest, if you're worried about reminding your DM of potentially negative effects, remember that you would want them to give you the benefit of the doubt and remember positive effects. It's not fair to only get the benefits of reminding your DM of things and not deal with potential drawbacks. A few days later, I got a 2-paragraph message of problem player going off on me saying I was purposely trying to sabotage the party. It's the player's job to call out the DM on things because all DMs cheat. That's fucking bullshit, and try to kill the players because they get tired of their NPCs dying. I didn't know how to respond, so I screenshotted the message to ask a friend of mine, and he sent me a bunch of stuff that when I read it was basically what I was trying to say. I sent him that, and he proceeded to tell me my friend was toxic for saying that the players and DM should work together to make the game fun because all DMs are against the players. And it's our job as players to be antagonistic towards the DM and call them out on everything. So I told everyone on the server we're in that I was leaving and why, and that apparently upset him even more. Now I need to ask, why not mention this to the DM? If it's bad enough, they could just kick problem player for being a toxic piece of shit. I'm a bit confused on problem player's thought process here. It's very antagonistic in its view of the DM and player relationship. This relationship overall should be fun and collaborative, not a fucking competition. The DM, yes, will have a semi-antagonistic relationship with you if your viewpoint is that the DM is just trying to kill you because they're putting things in front of your character to produce challenge. That is not the intent of the DM. The DM, if they're DMing how they probably should be and are not viewing it as player versus player kind of crap, they should not be viewing it as I need to win. Because I'm going to be honest with you, if they just wanted to win, we'd go, cool, your players meet in a tavern. Roll initiative as Tiamat bashes through the wall and wipes the party instantly when you're at level fucking 3 or some shit. If that's how it was supposed to be done and the DM was just supposed to fucking kill the party, every D&D game would just be rocks fall, your character dies. So I just don't understand the antagonistic like player versus DM perspective for just that fucking reason. You know? Them just leaving this server only means that the DM and the rest of the table has to just continue to deal with this fucking shithead. Why not tell the DM and get this fixed? Oh, I had also mentioned to him I quote cheated, as he called it, when a DM where I fudged the rolls occasionally so I don't kill the players because I'd rather they live and have fun than a total party wipe, which upset him even more. Next thing I know, he's on Roll20 posting on my looking for group posts letting players know not to join or leave my games because I cheat. He deleted his posts and blocked him on everything. Not sure how much of a horror story this is, but it seemed like a logical place to post this. I can understand fudging rolls sometimes as a DM, especially if you're super early on, you don't want to fucking flat out destroy your PCs or something. So, I don't consider it cheating if you fudge your rolls on occasion. Bit weird to me still that they didn't say anything to the DM. They just kind of upped and left. That entire table now still again has to deal with this shithead. I get telling everyone why, but why not try to fix the situation first? Unless you really didn't like the rest of the table for some reason, then I guess just burn that fucking bridge. But I would hope a player would try to correct the issue with the table and not just blow it up. But again, like our last story, I'm not in OP shoes here. I have not had to play session after session after session with this problem player and the DM. Perhaps he has gone to the DM and pled his case, and the DM, I don't know, told him to go fuck himself or something. Like, then I could guess, like, doing this dramatic, huzzah, and just blowing up the bridge that is this table here. I guess do that then, but, like, I still don't understand why you wouldn't try to fix it. But again, I'm not in OP shoes. I don't know everything that's happened. They also could just be at a fucking tipping point at this point. So, I'm going to agree to disagree with certain things here. I think extra steps maybe should have been taken before the dramatic blow up. But, again, I'm not in OP shoes. Our last story is going to be from user Beltzhazar, I don't know, Beltzhazar 98, and is titled, "That Guy Gets Mad at Every Other Player for Not Playing Our Characters Correctly for Their Classes." Story goes like this. I just had a session 0 for a new Daggerheart game set in ancient Greece, inspired by Homer's writings and other epics from that time. All of us are experienced with TTRPGs, but none apart from the GM had played Daggerheart itself. Well, when we start pitching character ideas, that guy takes issue with all of them. It's a little weird that someone's already being that guy. This system released not a few months ago. Like, how the hell are there power gamers or people who know how this has to be fucking played already? Like, this, it's like a brand new fucking system. I decided to make a Sephiroth, a holy protector, basically a paladin or a cleric, but notably are not necessarily bound by an oath, who had betrayed their duty in order to save somebody close to them, and they ended up entering a self-imposed exile as penance. Well, that guy complains that paladins can't break their oaths like that without falling, so I can't play a character like that. I point out that I am not playing a paladin in D&D, but Sephiroth in Daggerheart. And the DM agrees with me, so he drops it. I thought that would be it, but it was not. It's a little weird, to be honest, that that guy is taking issue with it, like, this has to be this way, if it's not this way, it's bad. Like, it's not their world. It'd be one thing if the DM was like, hey, I don't like this idea, like, in this world, like, this is not possible. Totally makes sense if you're trying to, because it's the DM's job to help line the characters up with the world, so that way they at least fit relatively well and the story can progress and move along and do what it's supposed to. So that guy here doing this crap is kind of dumb. Another player decides on a witch who learned the basics of magic from Artemis as a child and uses a bow to fight in honor of her goddess. That guy starts complaining about a spellcaster using a weapon and how witches should use magic through a staff to fight instead, and how the witches player doesn't understand witches if he thinks they could ever use a bow. The witches player tells him that it's his character and doesn't have to follow those tropes. Again, this system has been out for like 5 fucking minutes. How the hell are there stereotypes or expectations for the classes? Also, Who gives a shit? Take a staff, use its stats, flavor it as a fucking bow. Who gives a rat's ass? Turn the tropes on their head. Who cares? It's a TTRPG. That's the fun. Then the last player decides to play a warrior who is the demigod son of Hephaestus. I believe that is pronounced, not H-A, I think it's H-E. Again, that guy took issue with it. This time he complains about the character having a magical backstory when warriors aren't supposed to have magic, and that warriors should be regular people who stepped up instead of because they have magic in their veins. At this point, the GM had enough and tells that guy that he, quote, isn't a good match for the table, but before he is removed from the server, he goes on a big rant yelling about how we are a stain on role-playing for not knowing anything about how classes are supposed to be played. Okay, again, ignoring the fact that Daggerheart has been out for all of 10 fucking minutes, there really shouldn't be any stereotypes in this fucking system yet. The fun of TTRPGs is sometimes taking a concept and making it fucking weird. For example, in my current main 5e campaign, I have a bard who, by all intents and purposes, should be the party whore if we're following memes or stereotypes of bards. And his character, though, is literally against any sort of romance. And in fact, he's kind of like a mega goth emo character, if anything. Meanwhile, I have a Dampier swashbuckling rogue that is betting just about anything of age with a pulse, and that is willing. We'd expect probably that the personalities and the way these two PCs would be flipped, with the bard fucking anything that moves and the dark, mysterious rogue brooding in the corner. Their change on the characters is fun. It's a shit ton of fun. I love to get to watch it. You don't have to have a fighter or warrior that doesn't have magic power. Fuck that shit. You can be a fighter that gained their ability through being the god of a child. Okay? Let's think about this here. High-level fighters, I'm talking D&D here specifically, are quite insane when you think about it within the system. An average commoner, average human being, has what? Maybe 10 HP max and can slap once per turn for like no fucking damage. Meanwhile, a high-level fighter just fucking attacked a lich 8 fucking times in a matter of 6 seconds, like he's a fucking anime main character on crack, and then also the turn before probably just tanked a fucking meteor swarm which would have wiped out an entire village. Why the fuck couldn't they have those abilities? Because their mom or dad banged a god. Why not? Don't be afraid to turn characters, like your characters, like off like a trope on its head. Don't be afraid to do that. Just do it. Have fun with it. Don't yuck other people's yum. You know, the only time you should yuck somebody's yum is if you're the DM trying to make sure characters are fitting in the world, and you should still try to be collaborative with that. You know, hey, this doesn't fit. Let's alter it to make it fit, unless it's something absolutely egregious that won't work. In which case go, hey, I'm so sorry, this won't fit. And if the player only wants that, maybe it's not the right table or campaign for them. Something like that. Don't yuck other people's yum. Don't be this douchebag. That's all I'm going to say. That being said, thank you guys all for hanging out. That is going to be it for today. Please remember to like, subscribe, and comment. I would love to hear your thoughts on some of these stories. There's a couple stories in here where I don't fully agree with how the OP went about everything or how they reacted. Not to say that they're bad people or anything like that, just saying I don't fully agree. And I would love to know your thoughts on that specifically. Other than liking, commenting, subscribing if you have not yet, please do follow me on Twitch. I will see you guys all in the next one. Bye, everybody.